Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Much Ado About Film podcast with me, Celeste.
And me, Grace. So today for our first episode, we're going to be talking about and comparing James Gunn's 2025 Superman and a much older film, Sidney Lumet's 1957 12 Angry Men.
Let's start with 12 Angry Men.
Okay.
Um, I think you'd seen this before, hadn't you?
I saw it a few years ago and
Mhm.
absolutely loved it from a screenwriting perspective. I found it really interesting to digest, and then I rewatched it last week for this podcast. The first time seeing it.
It was my second time, but the first
Mm.
time was so long ago that there were bits of it that I remembered, lots that I
Yeah.
didn't. So I looked the film up, and because I knew it was based on a play,
Yeah.
but what I hadn't
Reginald
realized
Rose.
Yeah, but what I hadn't realized was it actually started off as an episode of a TV show, an anthology TV show,
Yes.
that then got adapted into a play that then got adapted into this. Apparently the original version of it from a show called Studio One, and they thought that the second half of that original episode had been lost because they just didn't have it in their records until someone rediscovered it in 2003, which I find really interesting. So it would
Oh,
be,
interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah, I'd be intrigued to see what the original was like.
Yeah. See if they made any significant changes and things like that.
Mm. So the for anyone who hasn't seen the film, it's a it's pretty much sort of all in one room.
Yep.
And we've got these 12 jurors, all men, who are there to debate whether or not they think the defendant has killed his father or not. And so at the start of the film, with their first count of guilty and not guilty, 11 of them vote guilty and one of them votes not guilty. And it's him wanting to just sit down and talk about it and really question why they think he's guilty and versus why he or it's not that he thinks necessarily that the defendant is not guilty. It's more that he's just not convinced that he is guilty. It's that absence of
He
definitive
doesn't think that
proof.
there's enough, and obviously it's all about in the American legal system and stuff like that. It's all about reasonable doubt,
Yeah.
and he has reasonable doubt to believe that the defendant is innocent, and the whole film is just in this one jury room and they just are debating their opinions, and it brings up so many personal biases and loads of prejudices that become just the basis for the rest of the film, really.
Yeah,
And it's
because
quite
it's
a short film because it's
mm,
only, I think it said it was 97 minutes or something like that. So it's quite short by today's standards
yeah.
of feature length films. But obviously, back in the 50s, that was probably quite usual.
Yeah, it was. I think pretty much everything was between 80 and 95 minutes, pretty
Yeah.
much.
So it was actually probably quite a long film back then.
Mm,
Especially if you consider that nothing, it's not action based. It's
no.
purely dialogue and character driven, which I think is really interesting from a modern day lens because so many of our films in the past few decades, it's just all about action and visuals, really. Not all, but a lot of the like blockbuster films, like if you
Mm,
think about a lot of sci-fi and superhero movies, which we'll get onto when we talk
yeah.
about Superman, it's very full of action and what happens. Whereas 12 Angry Men is about the people and their beliefs and the dialogue. And I just think it's so interestingly written and the imagery and the like there's loads of pathetic fallacy and it's just all of those more literary techniques used in film.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I do wonder if that's because, I mean, the 50s is relatively new in terms of like modern day filmmaking. Because what talkies came in, like, and sound
30s.
comes in right at the end of the 20s into the
Yeah.
30s. So, we're talking like 20 years or so. So it wouldn't be out of the realms of possibility for a lot of the writers on this to be probably have more of a background in playwriting or
Yes.
in playwriting and something else. But where radio, that's what I was going to say. Because
Yes.
in
Yeah, of
audio dramas,
course.
because like, this feels like something that would work really well in audio. And in fact, I know that Audible has done an audio forecast version of the play.
Oh,
Um,
that's really cool. I didn't know that. That'd be
yeah,
interesting to listen to.
exactly. And so like it because you can it would work pretty much exactly the same as an audio drama as it
Yeah.
does as a film because everything is so contained in one place.
Yeah, that's right. And it is just talking. There's not really a lot to do with the setting. I mean, other than I was doing some research into 12 Angry Men.
Hmm.
Um and I realized that because it's a single room drama, it makes you feel so claustrophobic when you're
Mm.
watching it, and it kind of increases the stakes because this is about the defendant's rest of their life, basically. And, if they go to prison, or is it, it's not the
No,
death penalty, is it?
it is the death
It is the
penalty.
death penalty. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I thought so. So they're making a life or death decision, and so they need to be so certain about it. And that's a lot of pressure on 12 people to just choose basically whether this person dies or not, given the
Y-
evidence that they've been presented. And so it just being in one room and that you don't leave that room until they make a decision.
Yeah. And I mean, I think what's so interesting about this film is it's both so topical and specific to that era, and yet it's also completely applicable to now because I mean I, I I mean I don't believe the death penalty is still a thing in New York nowadays, but there are states in America where the death penalty still is a punishment that's used
Yeah, and then
for
when
murderers.
you bring in the racial prejudice as well, because it's
Yeah.
not explicitly stated what race the defendant is, but he is suspected mostly to be either black or Hispanic, I believe, are the
Mm,
two that are kind of floated around quite often.
yeah.
And then you bring in the racial bias, and you would think, yeah, obviously in the 50s there'll be some racial bias, but even now,
Yeah.
especially with the political climate of the world at the minute, it's not exactly far from reality. I mean, yes, nowadays you wouldn't have a jury, sorry, of just 12 white men.
No.
You wouldn't. But it's the representation of that those are the people that are in power 9 times out of 10, and
Yeah.
they have these
Mm,
decisions, and they have to have some kind of moral integrity. And at the start, most of them don't. A lot of
no.
them are more like sheep. They go with the group. They say, 11 of us think he's guilty, so we'll vote guilty. But then juror 8 stands alone and it's like, well, let's think about this a little bit more. And obviously, spoiler alert, I guess. Can you give a spoiler alert for a 70
Sure.
odd year old film?
Oh,
Spoiler
yeah.
alert.
Yeah, by the way, this whole podcast spoilers everywhere. So if you haven't
Spoilers
watched either film,
everywhere.
yeah.
But more importantly for Superman, since it's a lot more recent. And I
Yes.
think 12 Angry Men, having been around for 60 odd years, 70 odd years, you're all right. But they do eventually go over to the not guilty side
Mm,
at the end. So it shows how one person standing against a room full of people just dead set against them, because a lot of them are a lot more obstinate than others,
yeah.
really headstrong and certain until the discussion starts. And it really just shows how important it is for debate,
Yeah,
because you
absolutely.
can't change someone's views without talking to them. I mean, some people won't change their views, and that because it's just who they are, and that
Mm,
just happens sometimes. But in this film, I think it's really interesting to see the duality of conformity and dissent, and I just think that's kind of the main theme of the film.
yeah. Um, I think what I found really interesting, and I'm only just thinking about this now, is that it's the two people that come off as the most logical at the start of the discussion that end up being the two that are the hardest to convince of the actual
Mm,
evidence.
yeah.
Um, because I guess, I mean, certainly for the second of the two, I mean, that's juror number three. He's incredibly, I mean, he is the perfect example of toxic masculinity as a
Oh God,
character.
yeah.
I mean, the way that, and it's so, again, it's so fascinating how this holds up because he's so, I mean, you can tell, I mean, it's never explicitly stated, obviously, because the great thing about this film is it never feels like it needs to spoon feed you any of the information,
Yeah.
which I really appreciate. But it's that you can tell that it's his tendency towards violence and this kind of, like, a sense of generational trauma of, well, like father beating son, etc., etc.
Yeah.
That that him reacting constantly with violence is the breaking point between the relationship between him and his son. And I think a lot of that dynamic he then, like, and his awful feelings towards his own son, that resentment, he then projects onto the young boy who's been accused of this crime.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what, again, I mean, skipping pretty far ahead here, but changes his mind right at the end because he's the last one
Yeah.
to have his mind change. He's the last one saying guilty, and it's when he sees a photo of his own son that he's ripped to shreds, that he finally starts crying and says not guilty.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. It's also one of the main core themes or, thematic um devices is how truth is filtered, if that makes it, because the way that they're talking about the evidence and the way that they discuss the case, they've been presented that evidence with an agenda.
Mm,
The prosecution will be presenting it with the goal of sentencing him to the death penalty, whereas the defense have the opposite goal, obviously. And these 12 people have to use only that evidence without their own biases. It's meant to be without your own bias, completely objective. And that's something about the justice system that's never actually going to happen. Everyone has their own biases, especially with something like the generational trauma. You're going to view it a different way. So not
mm.
only is the truth filtered by the people who are presenting it to you, but also by your own experiences.
Yeah, because you've got juror number 10, who's, the racist xenophobe,
Yes.
who's, going on about how, oh, I've met some good ones, but most of them are
Oh,
awful people. Yeah,
yeah.
and you've got that,
That's not, yeah,
yeah, exactly. And you've got that wonderful section where he's talking and everyone's one by one kind of faces away,
yeah. And
and
they
just
realize
won't look at him.
how wrong that is.
Mm,
And they're presented with their own prejudices. Because if you think about it in the terms of the era in historical context, most likely in 1957, it was less so than maybe 20 years before that. There was still just so much racial discrimination, and
but
especially in America.
yeah, I mean, well, 1950s, this is segregation was still a thing.
Yeah.
That's the
So,
reason. That's the reason you've got no black people in the jury.
yeah, because they're not allowed to, because
No.
that makes sense, apparently.
Mm.
Um, and it's interesting if you look at it from the lens of someone in the 21st century, because I'm not sure how it works in America, but I know that to go on a jury in the UK, you have to answer, they go in and they interview you to find out if you have any prejudices that might affect your perspective on the case being presented. And if you do have any bias, then you're taken off the jury. I don't know if that's changed,
Uh,
if it used to be like that, if it's like that in America. I
I
just
think
know
it.
that's what it's
I believe that's how it is in America. I think they're less like in America. They're really, really strict about who they'll let on juries to the point where they actually skew it towards a certain verdict,
Yes.
whereas they
I
don't do that in
am
the UK, or they shouldn't do.
I am very much purely basing my knowledge of the American legal system on TV and film that I have seen,
Mm,
mainly How to Get Away with Murder. So,
yeah.
but the UK legal system, I remember my mum was called up for jury service last year, and she had to go in for an interview to make sure that she wasn't racist or bigoted and stuff like that.
Mm. But I think the American legal system is even more selective
Yeah,
than the
probably.
UK's one, from what little I know of it. But what is interesting is that it's all men, because I had a quick Google and they did have like women were allowed to serve in juries in New York in the 1950s. I think it got changed in the
Interesting.
20s or 30s. So the deliberate choice to have 12 men is really interesting
Hmm.
because I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I don't know the nuances of it, so I don't know if women weren't allowed on murder trials, for example, but they
Hmm.
may have been allowed on less serious crimes, or
Yeah.
whether this was, or whether 12 men was normal, whether it wasn't, like, I don't know, but women were allowed on juries to some capacity. So
Maybe the title 12 Angry Men over 12 Angry People just had more of a ring to it.
and then I mean you've got the obvious thing slaring in your face, that's sexism, of
Well,
like not
that
having
is the
female
other option.
characters. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that is the other option. Also, it might be more interesting to get the male perspective on it because it is male on male violence because
mm,
he killed his dad. So it might be that they were choosing characters that writing out the characters that would more closely relate to the defendant, possibly.
potentially.
Um, I don't know. I don't know what was
No.
going on in Sydney Lumet's head. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Lumet.
So
Um,
it's probably Lumet, but I don't actually know.
uh, I don't know. Apologies, Sydney Lumet. I'm going to assume that he won't mind. Um, Something else about his film that from both of us being screenwriters,
Yes.
um, it follows the three act structure so simply
Mm,
and so simply. It's just so easy to read it that way because you start with the basis of it being 11 to 1, guilty to not guilty.
yeah.
And then you've got them deconstructing the evidence, forming their alliances, rising conflict between people when they dissent and they don't agree, rising debates, all of that stuff. And then they reach the new consensus at the end.
Yeah.
And I just liked that.
Mm. Would you say it fits the hero's journey? Just throwing that out there. Because I
Well,
haven't really thought about it.
oh, that's interesting. I don't know if it does.
Mm,
You could, if you extrapolate it enough, it probably does, as most
yeah.
things do. Because if you look at obviously Juror 8 as the hero in that situation,
Mm,
trying to convince everyone else, he's got his call to action being that he's the one that says not guilty and therefore goes out on his quest to convince the others. But,
and
there's no mentor figure, which I think is one of the most important parts of the hero's journey. There's not really a mentor figure.
well, I mean, there is. Was it Juror 9, the one that sits next to him, the old man, potentially?
You could you could paint him as the mentor figure. That's
Yeah.
true.
And
Hadn't
then
considered that.
you kind of get a little bit of the refusal of the call with him,
Mm.
like not what originally not wanting to debate it or not wanting to explain
Yeah.
why he's saying not
I don't
guilty.
know. With a film like this, I wouldn't often think about the hero's journey in that way.
No.
It's more with, I guess that's because I like to just see it simply, the hero's journey.
Yeah.
I also like to forget everything that we painstakingly learnt for 3 years. Um, like to
I
shove
mean,
that aside.
to be honest, it's the only structure that's really stuck in my brain out of all of it in terms of like the rough steps of it.
Yeah, I think John York's um five act structure is actually really embedded in my brain for no reason.
mm.
Um, that's
I,
completely irrelevant.
yeah.
That's interesting. Now I feel like I'm going to be thinking about the hero's journey for 12 Angry Men for a long time.
Well, it's just been annoying if nothing else. Because I was
Well,
like,
you've inspired much thought, Celeste. So much thought.
you're welcome.
No, thank you for that.
Um,
I don't know if I had anything else that was important. Oh, the pathetic fallacy that I really liked. Did you
mm,
notice it?
no.
Um, oh, so the weather literally shifts as their beliefs change. It
Oh,
starts as being stiflingly hot, overwhelmingly, it's awful and too hot in the room. And then it breaks and it starts to drizzle outside and it gets cooler and it gives a sense of relief for the audience. And it's such a small thing, but I of course I noticed it for some reason. Um, because it's just the way my brain works, I guess. And I just
hmm,
thought it was such a simple thing to add, but really effective.
I mean, now you mention it, yeah, I definitely noticed some bits in terms of like the rain,
Yeah.
but I don't think I really thought about it too. I mean, I registered it, but I don't think I quite connected it in the way that you did.
I mean, I might just be reading too much into it and it happened to start raining on the day they filmed. I
Mm, well,
maybe.
maybe, but I don't think you are. I mean, in terms of certainly in terms of the heat and things.
Yeah, because obviously temperatures boil, people are getting angry, as the title says. We've got 12 very angry men in that room. Um,
Mm. Well, I mean, the other things I was thinking about is like, I mean, you look at the split of the people who turn and say not guilty versus the one that hold on to guilty,
mhm.
and it very much feels like I mean, this is generalizing, and it's not 100%, but generally, it's the more intelligent characters that are able to question themselves, even if they
Yes.
don't necessarily agree with what the other people are saying and don't necessarily change their vote immediately. They're at least able to think it through. And even the guy with the glasses, who's one of the last two to change his
Yes.
vote, he at the very least entertains the idea after a while, even if he's not happy about it. He's still listening. Whereas
Yeah, they're more.
you've got the guy who just wants, was it juror number seven, who just wants to go to a baseball game with his wife. He just doesn't want
Yes.
to be there. And so, honestly, the only reason he changes his vote is so that he's seeing
You
which
can
way the
leave.
wind's blowing and is like, I
Yeah.
just want to go. Like, I don't care. But he's so flippant, which is what's interesting. Like, he, of all characters, I think he seems to be almost the most patriotic. And it's the fact that he
Yeah.
just doesn't care about other people's lives. And the fact that there is like, he is, I think, the only person in the room that really doesn't quite seem to really grasp the fact that there's someone's life in his hands.
Yeah, he is very, very much laid back about it, which I also thought was really strange because how can you sit in a room and be told whatever you 12 people decide in here will determine whether this person lives or dies? And then you're just
Mm.
like, well, I'd really like to get out of here and go see baseball. That's just, I think that's interesting and it will probably reflect um, a lot of real people's views in America in that time, especially when you think about segregation. It's like, well, it doesn't negatively affect me, so that's not my problem.
Yeah, I mean, he is, by definition, every sense of the word, very short-sighted.
Oh,
Like, yeah. Um, I guess the other thing that I was really thinking about as I was watching it, that I think I've touched on pretty much everything else, was that in most cases when it comes to remakes and reboots, I'm
mm,
very much against it when it's a really good piece of work. You know, I mean, I think for me, if you're gonna make a remake of something, it has to fall into three categories.
hmm
One is if the original was just bad, and so like remake it, like say Percy Jackson, for example, is like
yep,
improving on
yep,
it tenfold. The second is probably the rarest, which is where you're just continuing where you left off with like Doctor Who, for
Yeah,
example. And then the third is if you can add a new kind of angle and interpretation and reading to it, even if that's either tweaking the story slightly with something like Maleficent, or if it's like if you're adding in more representation, like pretty much every
yeah,
Shakespeare play under the sun.
yeah,
And so I think what I'm leading to here is I would be like usually I'd be like if when someone wanted to remake a film like this, I'd be like, no, absolutely not. But I think because it's 12 white men, that I'd be
mm,
intrigued to know what it would be like if you either gender swapped or race swapped some of these characters, and how would that
yeah,
change the nuances of this play? Because I don't think the actual script would change by and large. I don't think it would change very, at least not very much. And
yeah.
I think even if you were to set it today in 2025, I don't think the script would change as much as you think it would. I mean, I think some of the small like nuances and details may do, but
Yeah.
I think by and large, I think the film why this has stood the test of time is because somewhat unfortunately it still resonates and is still as relevant now with our justice system.
Oh yeah,
Because
absolutely.
as I mentioned earlier, the death penalty, even if it's not in New York, is still in some American states.
Yeah.
And I don't think, setting this in, I don't know which states do use Texas, maybe? I don't know.
I think I think so.
If you
I
set this in
think they have
Texas, for
the death
example,
penalty.
in 2025, would this change very much? And I think the answer would be no, probably not,
No,
unfortunately.
un very upsettingly. But I do think it would be interesting to throw some more representation in there and just kind of see what happens. It would be interesting to do it in a very realistic sense, in that it's almost like this is so completely on a tangent.
Mm,
But I remember when I was studying psychology at sixth form.
mm.
Did you do psychology?
I didn't.
So we did a lot about conformity and group behaviors, and there was this study done on things like that. I can't remember. I think it was Ansha. That might be wrong. Who did loads of group studies on conformity, and they were just so interesting to read about because if one person just decided to stand up in the middle of a doctor's waiting room, um, loads of other people would just stand up as well for no reason. They didn't know why they were standing up. They just stood up because someone else had. It was just really interesting. And I think that is certainly not something that has changed since the 50s,
No.
in the way that people are more often than not going to defer to other people when it comes to especially more important decisions. Um,
Yeah, because
and you know,
it reminds me of a couple of concerts I've been to fairly recently, where it's like where the people on stage have encouraged people to stand up, and it's to start off with it's only one or two people, and then more people, and more
yeah,
people, and more people,
yeah,
and
we
it's
are a very kind of herd mentality
yeah,
species, really. People might be more individual and, express themselves, but by and large, we're going to follow what we perceive to be the leader's opinions. And I think it'd be really interesting to see maybe some younger people in a 12 Angry Men reboot,
mm,
because I think they would be more likely to stand up for their overall beliefs, especially if they disagree with something, someone of our generation. Um, it would be
potentially.
interesting to see them debate a middle-aged white man
Mm.
um, on such a hot topic like the death penalty. Make it into a Jubilee video, I don't know.
So, speaking of a person who will stand up despite what anyone else thinks and will stand out amongst the crowd, Superman.
Mm.
I think that's
Yes.
pretty much the theme of the film. Like, pretty much the core of it is, one man who will stand up for other people, no matter who they are, where they're from, and always believes in helping others. And I think there is a pretty strong core of xenophobia, certainly running through
Oh, definitely, which is
Superman.
why it's garnered so much attention online, not just because it's a huge
Yes.
franchise and it's a new addition and kind of a new take on such a well-loved and well-known character who is just the archetypal do-gooder superhero, but also because he is in so many articles referred to as an alien immigrant fighting against capitalists. And I can't think of a more topical film to come out mid 2025 than the one that
Yeah.
James Gunn has directed for us. Who, by the way, I love James Gunn. I love
Yeah.
so many of his projects. And he's already signed on to do some more Superman for the DCU, if I'm
Um,
not mistaken.
I don't know about Superman specifically, but he is currently the equivalent to Kevin Feige for
Yeah,
DC at the moment.
hands down. Well, David, now I can't pronounce it. Cornsweet?
Mm.
Is that his name? Is that how you say it? David
Yes.
Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan?
Brosnan.
Oh, Brosnan. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
They've both signed contracts for more films in the DCU as
Mm.
Superman and Lois,
Well, that
which
doesn't
I'm
shock
very,
me.
very excited about. No,
Yeah.
they did so well.
They're so
Talk
good.
about on-screen chemistry
Mm.
off the charts.
Have have
Absolutely
you
incredible.
have you seen that meme of those of them pictured next to each other and of Amy Adams and Henry Cavill and their
I have,
promo
yeah.
shot? And then underneath you've got
Good
someone
haircut.
saying it looks like he's arresting her. Like with which like once you see it you can't unsee.
No, it's this was such a good take on a Superman film. I can't get over it because I will say in the past I've been quite anti DC films, always been a big fan of DC,
Hmm.
very big fan of DC shows in the past. You know, The Flash, Arrow, all that stuff.
I've got a
Massive
soft spot
fan.
for Gotham.
Oh, I
I
really
mean,
enjoyed Gotham.
I haven't actually. I think I only got up to like halfway through season three, but that show
I
incredible.
really enjoyed Gotham. But DC films have always been very hit or miss for me. Look at
Mm.
the Suicide Squad films, and also
Yes.
not so unpopular opinion, quite a popular opinion, I believe, and hope. Ezra Miller as the Flash is one of the worst things to happen to cinema in the past 100 years.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I haven't like I'm not as big a DC fan because I think the reason why I got into Marvel was not because I had any massive interest in the comics, but because I love storytelling and what they were
Yeah.
doing with the connected universe is something that hadn't really been achieved in films. And so that and the fact that
Yes.
quality wise to start off with, most of them were very good. I mean, you had a couple of duds, and been a
Yes.
little bit of a dip in quality in recent years. I think that's fair to say.
That is more than
Um,
fair.
it's quite generous, probably, but
Yeah.
but but I think that's what drew me in. Whereas DC, because it, I mean, I've seen odd film, like I've seen a couple of the Dark Knight films, I've seen the Batman, I've seen parts of the first Suicide Squad film and the entirety of the second one. And it's like it's more that I've been picking and choosing based on what other people have
Hmm.
said are the good ones, I guess,
Have you
mainly.
watched, have you seen Justice League?
No, I've not seen either of them.
Save yourself, watch neither of them. I hated them both. But that's because I will stand up for Grant Gustin as the Flash until my last breath. And no one else can do it like he can. Also,
Yes.
we won't even get into the Ezra Miller of it all as a person, but just
Mm,
horrific. However, this is
yes.
such an incredible start to a new chapter for the DCU. What are they calling it? Gods and Aliens?
I don't know.
That they're calling it. There's a it's what the DCU are doing. I think they've seen a gap in the market now that Marvel is on a bit of a decline and fans are not very happy with the way that it's going. I think DC has seen an opportunity there and they're really
Mm.
ramping up their quality. And I think
Well,
this is the start of that.
Well, the thing that excites me about the upcoming slate of projects, I mean, I won't spend too much time on this, but it's that James Gunn has said repeatedly that each film is going to have a completely different feel to it based on the character,
Yes.
which is what I really appreciate. It's something that the MCU should have done ages ago, and they've done a little bit, but they've been quite safe about it, and I think that's where
Mm.
they've really suffered. That and quantity over quality. But
Yeah.
and it's that James Gunn isn't. I guess it's because Warner Brothers and isn't a family like family brand. You know, like sure they
Yeah.
do family movies, but that's not all they do. Whereas Disney, who
Yeah.
owns Marvel, is primarily known for being family friendly, and so obviously that everything that they do is connected back to their original brand. And so if they
Mm.
start doing a bunch of R-rated Marvel movies, you're gonna get a certain sector of people complaining about that.
Yeah.
Whereas, and I guess they're worried about people, the conservatives mainly, let's be real,
Yes. Let's
just
be
getting
completely honest
really,
on this podcast.
yeah, getting really angry about the abandoning traditional family values and all that. Whereas Warner Brothers don't have to worry about that to the same extent. And so,
Mm.
doing a horror movie with Clayface and with the Swamp Thing isn't going to be
Mm.
as much of a problem. Or showcasing Supergirl as an absolute hot mess who's drunk all the time isn't going to be as much of a problem. Because they're
In fact,
not
I think it's
thinking,
glorious.
yes, exactly.
I
So
think that's
I
I
think,
can't wait for the sorry, you go.
no, no, you go, you go.
I was just gonna say I can't wait for the Supergirl film.
Oh, that little teaser at the end sold me on the
Oh,
character immediately. I know
I was so
basically nothing about
excited.
the character, so I was like, sure.
Oh, see, so I watched the CW Supergirl
Hmm.
show. Um, didn't finish it because it, like The Flash, as much as I love The Flash with my whole heart, that show means so much to my life. Um, it there were too many seasons, and I think the
Mm.
same thing happened to Supergirl. It needed to end a lot sooner than it did. So I already loved her, but this is going to be such a cool new take on her as a character. I am interested to know if they'll do her an it's not an origin story, is it, for her either?
I don't know because the I had a quick look at the synopsis on IMDb. No, not IMDb. Letterboxd, and it does say a specific thing about her backstory of how where
Oh,
Superman was raised with
interesting.
a loving family, she was left on an abandoned bit of Krypton floating in
Yeah.
space. So I do wonder if they'll start with an origin because I don't think her origin is quite as well known.
Yes, which is that's something that I found really interesting about this Superman film is that they didn't need to spend the first half of the film telling everyone where he came from, what he is, why he does what he does. They drop you straight into the action. And I think that's interesting. Some people online have argued that it kind of reduces the emotional stakes because you don't bond with him as well or as quickly because you don't know his backstory. But also, everyone knows Superman's backstory. If they don't know the details, they know, oh, he was from a different planet. He got put down here. Now he's a superhero. That's
Yeah.
basically all you need to know.
Well, I never seen a Superman film until this one. This is the first Superman film I've
What?
watched. Yes, I
You
know.
haven't seen,
Shocking.
I
I've
don't know
not
if
seen
this is a
any of the other ones.
controversial take. I don't know if this is controversial or not, but Man of Steel is a fantastic film. I don't know what how well it was received. I can't remember,
I
but I
think it
love
was
that
pretty.
film.
I think it was pretty mixed, where some people quite liked it,
Yeah,
others didn't.
I've seen every single Superman film. Man of Steel, one of my favorites. It's probably because I saw it when I was a bit older. I think I saw the originals when I was quite young because my dad big into superhero films.
Mm.
And Batman versus Superman, crazy movie, crazy film. And I just think this is such what I love is David Cornsweet. I think we need to take a
Yeah.
minute for how incredible his acting is and how lovable he is as a person. He's done so well for this film, and because that's a lot of pressure
Yeah.
to be thrown into a major franchise as one of the most famous characters ever written. That's pressure. That's terrifying. But he did
Yeah.
so well, and I think he's my favorite Superman now. Like Henry Cavill did really well for
Mhm.
his version of Superman. I feel
Yeah.
the writing let him down, and that's not his fault. But this is probably my favorite Superman film to date.
Yeah. Well, especially
Also,
when
it
you
had a
remember,
dog in it, so
yeah, especially when you remember the circumstances of how the film was originally announced as well, because you had, because after, was it Black Adam, which I haven't seen either, or was it Shazam 2? I can't remember which one it was, but where they revealed that Henry Cavill was going to come back. And they hadn't told James
oh
Gunn about
yeah,
any
and
of
then
this. And they announced it, and then suddenly they announced that James Gunn was taking over, and that actually a lot of the projects that were going to go forward got
yeah,
cancelled. And it's like,
yeah, that was
yikes.
messy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And so especially, I mean, obviously, David wasn't announced until a lot later than
yeah,
that. But even so, like that film for a while had that whole controversy kind of hanging around it for a while.
mm.
But I mean, I think the reason why I've never seen a Superman film until now was just because the character never has really intrigued me very much. Like, I mean,
Oh, interesting.
because I guess, I mean, I don't mind a superhero that's the embodiment of goodness, but sometimes when you have a character that is that good and that kind, that they can
Mm.
start to feel a bit, I hate this phrase, but Mary Sue, you know what I mean? I hate that
Yeah,
phrase the way it's used.
I do
But
understand that. And that's actually one of my favorite things about this Superman film,
mm,
the complexity of his. So this is major spoiler alert. I mean, this whole conversation is going to be a major spoiler alert for the Superman film. If you haven't seen it, go watch it and then come back
mm,
because oh my God. But you know, in when Lex Luthor goes into Fortress of Solitude and they discover the rest of Superman's dad's message.
yeah.
Oh my God. That was crazy. Because Jor-El, I think is his dad's name. Jor-El. I don't know. I might be getting that wrong.
You know
In
better than
loads of
me.
the other Superman films, they they play a clip of that message. That's quite famous. A bit of it's quite famous. About him being, the savior of Krypton and all that stuff. What they didn't say was that he was basically meant to dominate the entirety of the human race because he's better than people.
Mm,
That was a crazy twist. And I saw an interview with James Gunn about it. And he was shocked that some people didn't believe it was real or that they were confused by it because it just makes sense to him. And I
mhm,
thought that was so clever because it adds a whole new layer to Superman as a character.
mm,
Because if it was the case that he had been sent to Earth to be their protector because he has powers, then he didn't choose to be a hero. However, if that's not what he was sent there to do, which it isn't, his parents did not send him there to save humanity, but to overpower it. He chose, after seeing that message, to still be a hero and do what he believes is right. And that's his personal morality showing rather than just something built into him by his parents.
yeah. And I mean, I think I saw someone talking about this film somewhere. I think it might have been Tumblr, might have been Threads, can't remember. And it was how, like, it's all about power, right? Like Superman has ultimate power, but what he chooses to do with it is to help people. And I mean, I guess I mean, taking it back to something like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility and all that
Well, of
stuff.
course.
Yes. Um, and yeah, absolutely, it 100% shows who he is as a
Mm,
person. Because, it doesn't matter what people tell you to do, it's what you decide to do that matters. Um, and I was thinking, because I watched that bit where the public all turn on him,
Mm,
they all shun him because of the way that Lex Luthor kind of manipulates everything. And I mean, I'll come back to Lex Luthor and him as a character and the way he manipulates stuff in a minute. But the thing I really wanted to drill down on was the parallels, because this made me think of James Gunn himself. Because I mean, I don't know if I mean, I'm sure you remember, but back when I mean, it was after release of Guardians 2, when Guardians 3 was in very early development, and James Gunn got fired from the project and from
yes.
Marvel because of a few tweets that got resurfaced. And now I mean, then it later got revealed that not only had James Gunn apologized for this off his own back previously, but these tweets got dug up by some people who were specifically trying to target him, and had like an ulterior motive to it. And it made me think of that in that, some information comes out of context that is true, but the wider picture is very different from the way certain
Yeah.
people are trying to present it. And the way that the public initially turns on them only to then realize their mistake afterwards.
Yeah.
Which like,
That's really interesting.
I thought there was maybe, I don't know how conscious or subconscious this was, but given that it was James Gunn writing and directing this, that's where my brain immediately went to when seeing all of that stuff.
I hadn't seen that parallel before. It reminded me of to bring it back to Spider-Man
Sure.
in No Way Home,
Yeah.
when loads of people just turn on him and call him a terrorist because of the manipulations of one villain. And again, it feels very mirrored of that with Lex Luthor exposing in his mind,
Well,
um, and
I mean,
changing the public opinion.
yeah, but and that's something that feels more and more relevant as a theme and as a topic is the way that certain people in power will manipulate facts and manipulate the news to then try and manipulate the general public into thinking a certain way. And I think we're all guilty of falling for some propaganda by,
Oh,
um,
yes.
and I think this film deals with that a lot. And it's interesting that James Gunn wasn't specifically directing any of the messages of this film towards any specific group or any specific political. I know, which is so interesting how many parallels there are to what's happening in Gaza right now.
So, so many, and
So
so
many.
many. I've seen so many articles, let's just put it out there, saying that Superman is anti-Israel. And this was so interesting because I saw don't know if it was a tweet or threads or whatever it was, but it was
Yeah,
someone saying, never in the whole film does it mention anything to do with Israel and Palestine explicitly.
not
If
once.
you think that the bad guys in that film reflect Israel to you, you've painted your own picture on there, love. So see why you've done that. Also, the manipulation of the media, he whom shall not be named, with all of the things going on at the minute. Have you seen all the? I'm assuming you know who I'm talking about. Donald Trump.
Yeah, right. Okay.
You've
Yeah,
seen all the
yeah.
stuff with Obama recently.
I've heard some of it, but not all of it.
Bro's just faking videos of him getting arrested. It's a whole thing. But when you look at that and the way that a lot of, using a nicer word, controversial political figures will manipulate information to sway the public to their way, it is so, so obvious in this film that James Gunn is highlighting the dangers of that.
Yeah,
He's not
absolutely.
stating his political opinion explicitly and, coming outright and destroying political figures, but he is saying it without
Well,
being
I
too on the
think
nose, if that
I
makes
think he's
sense.
saying it as much as he can say it. I think
Yeah,
to the point
without
where people
getting arrested.
just the point where people were like, how did Warner Brothers let him get away with this? Like, that's a lot.
Oh,
Like, in a good way. But like,
yeah, definitely.
um, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely something Elon Musk and in Lex
Hmm.
Luthor. I mean, especially with how Musk basically admitted that he swayed the recent election. Like,
That
I
was
mean, he literally
crazy.
practically admitted that on Twitter, so or X.
Yeah. Apologies to Twitter.
Yes.
No,
Um,
it's also Lex Luthor being like a genius type figure, also very similar to Elon Musk with his, I mean, technological businesses and stuff. So
mm,
that's really obvious. And it ties in really nicely to what we were saying about 12 Angry Men being a showcase of prejudices and bias and not always believing what you first hear, and the
yeah.
fact that truth is filtered, like I said earlier about 12 Angry Men. It's it's all about one person and their personal morality versus the morality of the masses, and how
Yeah.
important it is to hold on to your personal morality even when people tell you you're wrong, because if you
Mm.
believe that you're doing the right thing, then at some point they're going to have to listen to you.
I mean, I think the one thing that when I was sitting in the cinema watching this, that I loved about this is I think James Gunn managed to perfect this universe's world building more in this one movie than I think even the MCU has managed to do. Because
Yeah.
I mean, you've got that. I mean, the scene that really. I mean, there's two that stick out. The main one. Actually, this might have been the same scene, thinking about it. It's where he's gone to Lois's apartment after everything's kind of got after he's burst into Lex's office and has had that filmed and put on social media.
Hmm.
Goes to Lois's flat and they're having this really serious conversation. In the background, you can see Green Lantern and Hawkgirl fighting a massive monster in the background.
Yeah.
And which I could, I mean, as much as I love that scene, I mean, it does kind of bring down the tone of what they're actually talking about because I
Yeah.
was trying not to laugh whilst watching the thing that was going on in the background.
I think
But
I was reading online about the reception of Superman
mm,
of this film in comparison to a lot of the other ones. And it hasn't done as well as expected internationally in terms of box
mm,
office revenue. That is most likely, according to James Gunn, he thinks it's because of people that are anti-America at the moment, which I mean justifiably so, anti-America. But so that's probably why. But it's gotten 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. And there's been a lot of praise for the sincerity, levity, and acting.
mm.
Because I think some superhero films tend to go too dark. I mean, I'm looking at the Batman. That's
I
quite
enjoyed that film, but I know you
quite
don't
dark.
like
Oh,
Batman very much, so
I actually haven't spoken to you about the Batman. I watched it over Christmas,
oh, you did.
and
Okay.
I was a big fan. Um,
Oh, you did like it.
oh, I loved it.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I
Okay.
found it really interesting. We will have to discuss on a
Yeah,
later
it was very
episode my
good.
thoughts on Batman overall as a
Yeah,
character, because I would love to get that out in the public sphere. I think it's very important. But
fair enough.
a lot of superhero films go really dark these days. It
They do.
used to be all about the fun and the exciting, like, oh, look, they've got superpowers and they're saving everyone. I think Tom Holland's Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man actually, less so Tobey Maguire's, that's also quite dark. But
Well, his first one
it,
isn't too
first one
much.
isn't, third one though.
Yeah. Well, the third
Oi,
one,
oi.
less we say about that, the better, honestly.
Yeah. But if you look at like Tom Holland's Spider-Man, especially Homecoming, very upbeat, very kind of
Mm,
positive energy. And I think this Superman film is the perfect blend because
yeah.
it covers such serious topics, whether it's implicitly or explicitly, and it shows his personal struggle and his basically existential crisis, but also it's so fun and bright and bold like a comic book, and it's got James Gunn's signature stylization of all the imagery, beautifully shot. And it's, the dog just ridiculous for no reason. What's his name?
Oh, Krypton.
It's just it is just Crypto.
Sorry, Crypto.
Crypto, that's it.
Yeah.
Um, Great addition. Don't really understand the necessity other than it's a bit of a comedic relief, really, isn't it, for the most
Yeah.
part, that there's a Superman dog. And I think that it's just such a good blend of dark and light. And I think that it plays back into superhero being both a superhero movie, sorry, being a mirror up to society in one way, but
Mm.
also being such a huge sense of escapism for a lot of people. And I
Yeah.
think that it was done so beautifully. And it's changed my opinion on DC films, and I will certainly be going to see whatever they do next.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main reason I was sold on seeing this film was James Gunn. If it had been anyone else, I
Hmm.
don't think I would have gone and seen it. But because it was him. In fact, I mean, I convinced my dad to go see this, which he is a big superhero fan, but he's not that fussed about Superman. Not because of his morality or anything like that, but because Superman has so many different powers that it's very hard to find a character that can actually defeat him. I think that's
What
why my dad doesn't like the character.
has he seen Batman versus Superman?
I yeah, I think he did. I think he's actually got a T-shirt of that film somewhere.
Well, it was weird, but
I haven't seen it, so I
basically
have no
touches
idea.
on how on earth is Bruce Wayne, who has just a bunch of expensive toys, is going to be a man that literally has one weakness.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, pretty sure he just uses that one weakness and then here we are. So
Mm.
very odd. But a lot of people do feel that way about typographical superheroes because it's not realistic. I mean, yes, it's fantasy and it's sci-fi, but you need flaws in a character. I mean, we
Yeah.
learned all about that at university. You need the flaws for the character, otherwise it's just not interesting. They need to
Mm.
have some kind of development. And if you're already a perfect superhuman, then you don't change over the course of the film. Whereas Superman in this film, he has his internal crisis. And while his morals don't change, his hope is very much comes from him rather than what he thinks his parents wanted for him. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think to go along with that as well is that even though he is a really kind person who strives to do good, he's not infallible. Like there are moments of stubbornness and of arrogance at
Mm,
times, especially towards, you've got that interview scene with him and Lois, where they have that
yeah,
massive argument. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the movie, and it was in all the trailers, and it's
yeah,
where she plays devil's advocate. She agrees with him, but she's not saying what he wants to hear. She's saying what other people are gonna say.
yeah,
And
yeah,
she's really pushing at his buttons to get a rise out of him because she knows that, well, A, that's her job as a journalist to question everything, but also, she knows that other people are going to give him a hard time about this.
yeah,
And if not her, then it'll be someone else. And I think that gave some extra depth to the character that we might not see in other versions necessarily.
very much so. There's been some criticism of Superman saying that it was a bit over busy with the number of kind of storylines going on at once.
Yeah, I saw that they thought it was overstuffed, but I disagree with that actually,
I very much disagree.
because I don't. I mean, maybe it's because we're coming from a screenwriting background and we've both written like TV pilots, but it's just like you need a subplot, and I think everything
Yeah,
tied up and connected back to each other. So I don't know how you would take them out without the film
no,
kind of falling apart. Like I don't quite get. I mean, I get the idea and the criticism that it maybe needed to breathe a bit more, pacing wise. I
Mm.
can understand that, but like the actual there was no extra characters as far as I could tell. There was no like scenes where I was like, oh, you could cut that. Like I don't
It all
think,
feels important. It all
yeah.
drives the story. It all drives the character development. How long was the film? Do you know its runtime?
It was just over 2 hours, I think. Like it wasn't ridiculously
Let's
long.
have a look. No, 2 hours, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's basically nothing. You know, I mean, I've seen Avengers Endgame about 500 times, and that's about 3 hours long, and I never
Yeah.
feel that's too long. So 2 hours and 10 minutes, piece of cake.
Well, I think it's all about pacing. At the end of the
Yeah,
day,
hands
it's
down.
all down to the pacing. Like, you know, something really short can feel like forever if it's paced wrong
Yeah.
with the wrong
Well, because look at
director.
12 Angry Men as well. That didn't, for me, despite being such an old film, it didn't feel like it dragged,
No.
which is really because I often, when I watch older, more classic films like we did at uni, I often felt that some of them were a bit slow and could have done with a bit of a rejig of the structure to make sure that it
Mm.
flowed better, in my opinion. But I prefer fast-paced
So do I.
films for the most part.
But I
So
think,
maybe that's why we both liked Superman because it was
yeah,
quite fast paced. But also it none of the scenes I was sat there thinking you could have done this in one sentence and moved on
no.
because all of it felt important and impactful and it was done so well.
So, with that said, what would you rate these films out of 10? You can do your
Oh,
point something if you want.
if I'm going on overall enjoyment and feeling, because obviously I could sit here and rate every aspect of the film, but overall I would give out of 10? Are we doing out of
Yes,
5? Out of 10?
out of 10.
Right. I would give 12 Angry Men a solid 8.3. Solid 8.3 for
Hmm.
12 Angry Men. But Superman's going to take it with like a good 9. Give it a good 9 out of 10. There are a lot of things I would change about it.
It's,
What have you
it's
rated?
it's funny. I did the exact opposite to you.
How interesting.
I did Superman at 8.2, and then I did 12 Angry Men at 9.7. So
Wow.
yeah.
Maybe maybe it's because I remembered it better when I watched 12 Angry Men.
Mm,
So I kind of knew what was happening, and
sure.
it was still impactful, and I viewed it through a very different lens after studying film and screenwriting. But
Hmm.
it might be that if I'd rated it when I first saw it, it would probably be a lot higher. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's very interesting. We have opposing views, but also just agree that they're both great films.
Yes.
Yeah, hands down. And interesting how similar they are, despite being filmed so far apart.
Yes. In terms of themes. Yeah. That's all we got time for the podcast for this week. Or join us next time where we review two more films.
Thanks very much.
Bye.